90-Day Fiancé. Thais storms. Out of therapy. After explosive fight with Patrick's brother, John. Part 1. The therapy session explodes. What was supposed to be a therapy session designed to bring this family closer together quickly turned into one of their most uncomfortable confrontations yet. Thais Ramon walked into the room with Patrick Mendes and his brother John, hoping they could finally address the tension that has followed them for years. But instead of finding peace, Thais found herself defending her honesty, her marriage, and even decisions involving her own body. And when John pushed one particular accusation too far, everything changed. Thais eventually got up and walked out of the therapy session, while Patrick found himself caught between his wife and his brother. But the biggest moment wasn't simply Thais leaving. It was Patrick finally drawing a very clear line with John. Welcome back to where we break down the biggest reality television drama, shocking confrontations, and relationship updates. This latest 90-Day Fiancé moment proves that some family problems don't disappear simply because everyone agrees to sit down in the same room. Sometimes, putting everyone together only brings old resentment back to the surface. The tension centers around Thais, Patrick, and John, a trio whose complicated family dynamic has repeatedly created uncomfortable situations. John has never been afraid to express his opinion about Patrick's relationship, and Thais has never been afraid to push back when she feels John has crossed a boundary. This time, however, the disagreement becomes deeply personal. During a confessional, John questions Thais's honesty and brings up cosmetic surgery she reportedly had in Brazil. According to John, Thais wasn't completely truthful about it. He also suggests that whatever procedure she had wasn't something she was doing for Patrick. From John's perspective, the bigger issue appears to be honesty. If someone hides one thing from their spouse, he seems to wonder whether there could be something else they aren't revealing. But that's exactly where the situation becomes dangerous. Because John isn't talking about his own marriage. He's talking about Patrick's. And once he brings those concerns directly into the therapy session, Thais immediately feels like he's creating unnecessary conflict. Thais makes it clear that she and Patrick have already discussed the situation. In her mind, that should have been the end of it. Patrick is her husband. If Patrick understands what happened and the couple has already dealt with it privately, then why should John continue interrogating her? But John isn't ready to drop the subject. Instead, he pushes harder. He questions why Thais would lie to Patrick in the first place and whether this was really an isolated incident. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about cosmetic surgery. It's about trust. It's about honesty. And most importantly, it's about whether John has the right to challenge Thais about what happens inside her marriage. Patrick can immediately see where the conversation is heading. The tension is rising. Thais is becoming increasingly frustrated. And John continues pushing. Patrick finally tells his brother that he's going too far and needs to calm down. But by that point, the damage has already been done. The therapy room that was supposed to provide a safe environment for communication has become another battlefield, and Thais reaches her limit. She gets up, she walks away, and Patrick is left behind with John. But instead of defending his brother, Patrick turns directly toward him. This time, Patrick isn't interested in excuses. He tells John that he has shown zero respect for Thais. Then, Patrick makes the boundary even clearer. John cannot speak to his wife that way. And that statement could become far more important than the argument itself. Because underneath this explosive confrontation is a much bigger question about Patrick's priorities. For years, Patrick has been forced to navigate the complicated relationship between his wife and his brother. John is family, but Thais is also Patrick's family. And when those two relationships collide, Patrick can't always remain in the middle. Eventually, he has to decide where the boundaries are. This therapy session may have finally forced him to do exactly that. Why Thais finally walked away. The confrontation appeared to represent years of frustration finally reaching a breaking point. From Thais's perspective, John wasn't simply asking a harmless question, he was questioning her character. There's a major difference. When John suggests that Thais hasn't always been honest, the discussion moves beyond one past decision and begins challenging whether she can be trusted. And doing that in front of Patrick during therapy makes the situation even more intense. Thais insists that the issue had already been handled between herself and her husband. That detail matters. Marriage naturally includes private conversations, disagreements, mistakes, and decisions that couples may resolve without involving other family members. If Patrick and Thais already addressed the issue, Thais clearly doesn't believe John should reopen it. John, however, seems to see things differently. As Patrick's brother, he may believe he has a responsibility to say something when he sees behavior that concerns him. That helps explain why neither side is willing to back down. Thais sees interference. John sees a reason for concern, and Patrick is standing directly between them. But John's questioning becomes increasingly personal. When he wonders whether Thais lied only once, the implication becomes much bigger than the original topic. Now he's essentially questioning whether Patrick should trust everything his wife tells him. That's where Patrick appears to realize the conversation has crossed a line. Patrick tells John he's getting worked up for no reason. He wants his brother to calm down. But Thais has already had enough. Walking out of therapy can look dramatic from the outside, but within this particular confrontation, it also sends a message. Thais refuses to remain in a conversation where she feels disrespected. And once she leaves, Patrick has a decision to make. Does he tell Thais she overreacted? Does he defend John because they're brothers? Or does he confront John? Patrick chooses the third option. He tells John directly that he has zero respect for Thais. That's a powerful accusation coming from Patrick because it identifies what he believes is the real problem. This isn't only about whether John agrees with Thais. Family members don't have to agree about everything. The problem is how those disagreements are communicated. Patrick appears to believe John has gone beyond expressing concern and moved into disrespect. And then comes the line that defines Patrick's position. John cannot talk to Patrick's wife that way. In that moment, Patrick isn't just trying to stop an argument. He's establishing a boundary. Thais is his wife, and regardless of whatever disagreement exists between John and Thais, Patrick expects his brother to respect that relationship. But setting a boundary doesn't automatically solve years of tension. If anything, this confrontation could force all three of them to face something they've been avoiding. Patrick cannot constantly act as the bridge between two people who fundamentally don't trust each other. Thais may feel that John interferes too much in her marriage. John may feel that Thais doesn't always treat Patrick the way he deserves. And Patrick may love both of them while becoming increasingly exhausted by being caught between them. Therapy was supposed to help untangle those emotions. Instead, it exposed just how deep the conflict still runs. And the cosmetic surgery discussion may only be the trigger. The real battle appears to be about loyalty, boundaries, honesty, and respect. Those issues are much harder to resolve, because even if John apologizes for the way he spoke to Thais, the underlying distrust could remain. And even if Thais returns to the conversation, she may now wonder whether John will ever truly accept her place in Patrick's life. That leaves Patrick facing perhaps the hardest position of all. He wants a relationship with his brother. He wants to protect his marriage. But if John and Thais continue seeing each other as opponents, Patrick may eventually be forced to establish even stronger boundaries. Patrick finally draws the line. The most revealing part of this entire confrontation may actually happen after Thais leaves. Patrick's reaction tells us exactly how seriously he's taking the situation. Instead of brushing off John's comments as typical brotherly behavior, Patrick confronts him. That's important, because Patrick isn't telling John that he can never disagree with Thais. He's telling him that there is a way his wife deserves to be treated. And Patrick believes John crossed that line. That could represent a turning point in their family dynamic. John and Patrick share a strong brotherly connection, but marriage changes family relationships. Once Patrick married Thais, protecting that marriage became part of his responsibility. That doesn't mean blindly agreeing with everything Thais does. It means making sure outside relationships don't constantly undermine the marriage. And that's exactly why this therapy session becomes so significant. John may genuinely believe he's protecting Patrick. He may look at Thais's past decisions and think his brother deserves answers. But there is a point where protection can begin looking like interference. Patrick appears to believe John reached that point. Meanwhile, Thais's decision to leave shows that she's no longer willing to participate in every confrontation. Instead of continuing an argument that was becoming more heated, she removed herself from the room. But leaving doesn't resolve the conflict. Eventually, all three will have to confront the larger problem. Can John express concerns without attacking Thais? Can Thais accept that John will remain an important part of Patrick's life? And can Patrick establish boundaries strong enough to keep his marriage from being pulled into repeated family battles? Those answers could determine where this relationship goes next. Because therapy only works when everyone is willing to listen, not simply wait for their opportunity to fight back. This session clearly showed how much unresolved resentment remains. John doesn't completely trust Thais. Thais doesn't appreciate John's involvement in her marriage. And Patrick is tired of watching the two people he cares about clash. But Patrick's final reaction makes one thing clear. Whatever disagreement exists, he expects his brother to respect his wife. That doesn't erase everything that happened. It doesn't automatically repair Thais and John's relationship, but it establishes a line Patrick apparently doesn't want crossed again. And after Thais stormed out of that room, John was left facing something he may not have expected. This time, Patrick wasn't standing in the middle. He was standing up for his wife.